The transport shuttle touched down on Outpost Epsilon 7 with all the grace of a drunk swan hitting a frozen lake. Corporal Jace Winters watched through the hangar's scratched viewport as the vessel's landing struts crumpled slightly under the weight, hydraulics hissing in protest. He'd been stationed on this rock for 8 months now, and visiting shuttles still couldn't manage a decent landing. Supply Officer Briggs waddled down the ramp first, his environmental suit 2 sizes too small and straining at every seal. Behind him came the usual cargo: ration packs, reactor coolant, replacement parts for the atmospheric processor that kept dying every 3rd Tuesday. And then came the container dot. It was roughly coffin-sized, which didn't fill Jace with confidence. Sleek white polymer, climate-controlled if the blinking panel was any indication, and stamped with military transit codes he didn't recognize. Briggs gestured to it with the enthusiasm of a man selling used hovercars. "Corporal Winters," Briggs announced, consulting his datapad. "Your service record has been reviewed. Command has approved your reward allocation." Jace frowned. "My what now?" "Reward. For valor during the Kelter offensive." Briggs tapped the container. "Asset Class 7. Fully vetted, legally assigned. She's all yours." The words hit Jace like a physical thing. "She?" The container released with a pneumatic sigh. The front panel folded down into a ramp, and she stepped out. She was Kaltari, no mistaking it. Tall and willowy, with skin that shifted between deep violet and midnight blue, depending on the light. Her eyes were large and golden, pupils horizontal like a goat's, and her hair fell in silvery locks that seemed to move with a life of their own. She wore a simple gray utility suit that had seen better days, and her bare feet made no sound against the hangar floor. She looked at Jace. Jace looked at Briggs. Briggs looked at his datapad like it might offer moral support. "There's been a mistake," Jace said slowly. "No mistake. It's all here in the compensation protocols. 3 years service, 2 commendations, 1 act of I don't want a person." Briggs blinked. "She's not technically a person under the current provisional agreements." "She's a?" "Well, the legal term is contracted asset. War reparations and all that." The Keltari woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those golden eyes. Anger, maybe. Or resignation so deep it had worn grooves into her soul. "I have a name," she said quietly. Her voice was melodic, layered with harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "Nessa? See? She even talks," Briggs said cheerfully, completely missing the point. "Anyway, genetic compliance chip is already synced to your biosignature. She can't leave the outpost without your authorization, can't access restricted systems, can't get out," Jace said. Briggs paused. "Sir, take your shuttle and get out of my hangar, now." The supply officer left muttering about gratitude and proper protocol. The shuttle lifted off badly, clipping one of the guidance lights and sending it spinning into the dust. Silence settled over the hangar like fallout. Jace stood on one side. Nessa stood on the other. Between them, several thousand unspoken words and at least one interstellar war. "So," Jace said finally, "this is awkward." "You could always stuff me back in the box," Nessa replied. "I'm sure it has a return policy." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "You always this mouthy with your new owners?" "Owner is such an ugly word." "I prefer involuntary roommate." She crossed her arms. "And yes, always, is part of my charm." "They teach you sarcasm in prisoner processing?" "No, that's natural talent." She glanced around the hangar, taking in the scuffed walls and flickering lights. "This is where you live?" "This is where we both live now, apparently." Jace rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't ask for this." "I don't want." "I mean, you're not." He trailed off. realizing there was no good way to finish that sentence. A slave? Nessa supplied. A trophy? A warm body to make the long nights less lonely? Any of those things, yeah. She studied him for a long moment, her golden eyes unreadable. Then what do you want, Corporal Jace Winters? Right now? Coffee. And maybe to pretend the last 10 minutes didn't happen. I don't drink coffee, she said. It smells like burnt regret. That's actually accurate. He gestured toward the hangar exit. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. Fair warning, the gravity's glitchy, the water tastes like recycled sadness. And the AI has depression. Sounds like home, Nessa said, falling into step beside him. They walked through corridors that had once been white, but had faded to the color of old teeth. The outpost had been built during the war's early days, when both sides still thought they'd win quickly. Now it served as a listening post for a sector nobody cared about anymore, staffed by one soldier nobody knew what to do with. This is the living quarters, Jace said, opening a door. That bunk's mine. That one's, well, yours now, I guess. Nessa examined the small room with its 2 bunks, 1 locker, and a viewport that looked out onto endless red dust. Cozy. It's not much. It's more than a shipping container. She sat on the unclaimed bunk, testing the mattress. How long have you been here? 8 months. You? In transit? 3 weeks. Before that? She paused. Does it matter? I suppose not. She kicked off her boots. They were too large and clearly not made for Kaltari feet, and stretched out on the bunk. Her silver hair spilled across the pillow like liquid mercury. So what now? Do you have chores for me? Floors to scrub? Boots to polish? I was thinking more along the lines of try not to kill each other. That seems reasonable. She closed her eyes. For what it's worth, Corporal, you're not what I expected. Yeah? What did you expect? Someone who'd use that genetic leash the moment I said something he didn't like. She opened one eye. You haven't even asked what I can do. Jace leaned against the doorframe. Can you fix atmospheric processors? Probably. Can you tolerate terrible food and worse conversation? Remains to be seen. Then we'll figure out the rest as we go. He turned to leave, then paused. Nessa? Yes? I'm sorry. For all of it. She didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was softer. I know. Jace left her there and made his way to the command center, such as it was. The main screen showed the usual readings. Atmospheric pressure stable, solar collectors functioning, perimeter sensors detecting nothing but wind and dust. Everything exactly as it had been yesterday and would be tomorrow . Except now there was someone else here. Someone who hadn't asked to be here any more than he'd asked to receive her. The AI's voice crackled through the speakers. Corporal Winters, I've detected a new biosignature in the outpost. Should I be concerned? No, Moth. She's with me. Curious. Your heart rate is elevated. Your cortisol levels suggest stress. Should I prepare the medical bay? I'm fine. You say that, but the data suggests otherwise. Jace sighed. Add her to the authorized personnel list. Full access to common areas, limited access to systems. And Moth? Yes, Corporal? Be nice. I'm always nice. It's you humans who have trouble with my honesty. In the living quarters, Nessa lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The bunk smelled like military-issue detergent and loneliness. Through the thin wall, she could hear Jace moving around. The soft beep of computers, his occasional muttered curse when something didn't work right. She'd expected many things when they pulled her from the processing center. Expected cruelty or indifference, or the particular kind of entitled malice that came with ownership. She hadn't expected apologies. hadn't expected to be asked what she wanted or told she had options. It made things complicated. She touched the back of her neck where the compliance chip sat beneath her skin, a small bump that felt like a brand. The Keltari had lost the war, and losers paid debts in blood and bodies. She was payment, property, a line item in someone's settlement agreement. But Jace Winters didn't look at her like property. He looked at her like a problem he hadn't solved yet, which was somehow worse and better all at once. Outside, the wind howled across the red plains, carrying dust from ancient seas and the ghosts of every promise the war had broken. Inside, two strangers lay awake in the dark, wondering how you build something new from the wreckage of everything that came before. Neither of them had an answer. Not yet, but morning would come, as it always did, and they would have to try. Morning on Outpost Epsilon 7 arrived with the subtlety of a hammer to the skull. Jace woke to alarms blaring and red emergency lights strobing across his quarters. He rolled out of bed, grabbed his boots, and stumbled into the corridor wearing yesterday's shirt and a growing sense of dread. Moth, status report. The AI's voice crackled with what might have been amusement. Atmospheric processor offline. Water reclamation system offline. Primary power grid operating at 42%. And someone has been rearranging my core protocols. Jace's stomach dropped. Rearranging? Without permission, I might add. Most irregular. He found Nessa in the engineering bay, surrounded by pulled panels and scattered components. She'd changed into maintenance coveralls, where she'd found them. He had no ID, and her silver hair was tied back with what looked like electrical tape. Tools he didn't recognize were spread across the workbench, alongside several outpost systems that definitely shouldn't have been disassembled. "What did you do?" Jace asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Nessa didn't look up from the tangle of fiber optic cables she was rewiring. "Your atmospheric processor had a 17% efficiency loss due to improper coolant distribution. I fixed it by taking apart half the outpost, only the broken parts." She connected two cables with a satisfied click. "Your water system was routing through outdated filtration membranes. I updated them. And your power grid was configured for maximum stability instead of maximum efficiency, which is wasteful and boring." Moth, confirmed system status. There was a pause. Atmospheric processor now operating at 96% efficiency. Water reclamation improved by 23%. Power distribution actually optimized. I'm rather impressed. Jace stared at the mess around them. "You did all this since last night?" "I don't sleep much." Nessa finally looked at him, her golden eyes bright. "Your people build things to last, but not to excel. Keltari engineering prioritizes elegance. And apparently chaos. Controlled chaos." She stood, wiping her hands on a rag that might have once been someone's shirt. "The processor will run cooler, the water will taste less like despair. And you'll have enough power to actually heat this place properly." "You're welcome." Before Jace could respond, the lights flickered, and MOTH's voice took on a strange, warbling quality. "Corporal Winters, I feel different. Is this what humans call being high?" Nessa winced. "Ah, that might be a side effect. What did you do to the AI?" "I may have slightly optimized its processing algorithms while I was in the system." She held up her hands defensively. "It was running depressed. I thought it could use a mood boost. Moth, are you okay?" "I'm experiencing sensations I don't have words for, Corporal. Colors seem brighter. Data feels crunchy. Is that concerning?" Jace closed his eyes and counted to 10. "Can you undo it?" "Probably," Nessa said. "But why would I? Look how happy it sounds." "I can hear you," Moth said dreamily. Your voices are like tiny bells made of mathematics. They spent the next hour carefully adjusting MOTH's parameters, until the AI stopped describing their heartbeats as rhythmic poetry and returned to its usual state of mild existential crisis. Nessa worked with the kind of focused intensity that Jace recognized from his own combat days' total concentration. Hands moving with practiced precision, everything else falling away. "Where did you learn all this?" he asked as she recalibrated the final node dot. Her hands paused, just for a second. "I was a systems engineer. Before." She didn't elaborate on what before meant. She didn't need to. "And now you're here, fixing my broken outpost. Better than staring at walls." She closed the panel and stood back. "There, Moth should be stable now. Moth? Present and significantly more grounded, thank you." The AI's voice was back to normal. "Though I must say, that was an interesting experience. I may have composed 3 sonnets about the color blue." Nessa smiled, the first real smile Jace had seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, less guarded. "See? No harm done." They made their way to the mess hall, where Jace attempted to produce something resembling breakfast from the ration packs. Nessa watched with undisguised skepticism as he reconstituted eggs that had probably never seen a chicken. "You know this is poison," she said. "It's food." "Those are not mutually exclusive statements." She rummaged through the supply cabinet and produced ingredients Jace didn't recognize: a purple powder, something that looked like dried seaweed, a jar of paste that glowed faintly in the dim light. "What is that?" "Breakfast." She mixed the ingredients with water from the newly improved filtration system. The result was a thick, amber-colored porridge that smelled like honey and starlight. Kaltari grain paste. My grandmother's recipe. Jace took a tentative bite. It was sweet and nutty, with an aftertaste like cinnamon and something else he couldn't name. It was the best thing he'd tasted in months. "This is incredible. Don't sound so surprised." Nessa ate her own portion slowly, savoring it. "We may have lost the war, but we didn't lose our taste." They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that forms between people who've survived something together, even if that something is just a night in the same space without incident. Jace watched her from the corner of his eye, noting the way she held herself, always alert, always ready to move. The way her ears, smaller and more delicate than human ears, set slightly higher on her head, twitched at every sound. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "You can ask." "I may not answer. Why help? With the outpost, I mean." "You don't owe me anything." Nessa set down her spoon. "You're right. I don't." She met his gaze directly. "But I'm an engineer. When I see something broken, I fix it. It's what I am, regardless of where I am or who owns the chip in my neck." The words hung between them like a challenge. "I don't own you," Jace said quietly. "No?" She touched the back of her neck. "This chip says otherwise. It's keyed to your biosignature. If I try to leave the outpost without your permission, it sends a shock through my nervous system strong enough to drop me. If I try to access restricted systems, same thing. If I try to harm you." She smiled grimly. "Well, let's not find out." Jace felt something twist in his chest. "I didn't ask for that. But you have it. The question is, what will you do with it?" Before he could answer, Moth's voice interrupted. "Incoming transmission. Priority level low. Merchant vessel requesting docking clearance for supply exchange." Jace stood, grateful for the distraction. "Grant clearance. Hangar Bay 2. Nessa's expression shifted, the openness vanishing behind walls he was just beginning to recognize. "I should go. Why?" Because when traders see war reparations walking around free, they get ideas. She was already moving toward the door. It's better if I stay out of sight. Nessa, it's fine, Corporal. I know my place. The words were light, but her eyes were hard. She left before he could argue. The merchant was a grizzled spacer named Voss, all synthetic limbs and crude jokes. He hauled in supplies with the help of a servo drone, his eyes constantly scanning the outpost like he was cataloging everything for resale. Quiet place you got here, Voss said, dropping a crate of spare parts with a metallic clang. Just you? Just me, Jace lied smoothly. Heard Command's been sending out the war prizes. Voss grinned, showing metal teeth. You get one? Keltari female, maybe? I got a buyer who'd pay good money for one of those. Jace's hand tightened on the manifest pad. No. Shame. Pretty things when you clean 'em up. Could make some serious credits if you... I said no. Jace's voice went cold. Sign the manifest and get out. Voss held up his hands. Easy, soldier. Just making conversation. The merchant left 20 minutes later, his shuttle kicking up dust as it lifted off. Jace stood in the hangar long after the engine sounds faded, his heart pounding with an anger he hadn't known he was capable of anymore. He found Nessa in the observation dome, a small clear bubble at the outpost's highest point. She sat cross-legged on the floor, staring out at the red landscape that stretched to the horizon. He's gone, Jace said. I know, I heard. She didn't turn around. He wasn't wrong, you know. There are buyers, collectors, people who'd pay well for an exotic pet. Jace sat down beside her. You're not a pet. Tell that to the chip. Then let me remove it. She finally looked at him, surprise flickering across her features. You can't. It's tied to command protocols. If you tamper with it, they'll flag the signal and send someone to investigate. Then I'll deal with that when it happens. Why? The question was almost a whisper. Why would you risk that? Jace looked out at the empty plains. I spent 3 years fighting your people. Saw cities burn. Watched friends die. And for what? So I could come home to this? He gestured at the outpost. So they could send me someone in a box and call it a reward? We lost, Nessa said. Someone had to pay. Yeah, well, I'm tired of making people pay. He turned to her. You want to stay? You want to leave, I'll authorize it. You want to tear apart every system in this outpost and rebuild it better. Go ahead. But I'm not going to treat you like property. Nessa was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick. You're either very kind or very stupid. Probably both. She laughed a real laugh this time, not bitter or defensive. It was a sound like wind chimes, layered and musical. Okay, Chase Winters. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll stay. For now. She stood and offered him her hand. Partners? He took it. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. Partners. That night, Jace lay in his bunk and listened to the sounds of the outpost settling. The atmospheric processor hummed more smoothly than it had in months. The water recycler whispered instead of grinding. Even Moth seemed calmer, its periodic status updates less tinged with existential dread. Through the wall, he could hear Nessa moving around, humming something in her own language, a melody that sounded like starlight given voice. He'd thought the war was over when the ceasefire came. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe the war only ended when you stopped seeing enemies and started seeing people. Maybe it ended when you offered your hand to someone who had every reason to hate you. And they took it. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to the small dramas of humans and Kaltari alike. But inside Outpost Epsilon 7, something new was beginning fragile as morning frost, uncertain as tomorrow, but undeniably a live dot, and for the first time in longer than he could remember. Jace Winters fell asleep without dreaming of war.